She publicly mocked my promise ring as a gumball machine trinket. I removed it, sold all her jewelry, and found my true partner on the proceeds. The air in the Whitmore Contemporary Art Gallery opening was thick with the scent of aged oak barrels and the low hum of self-importance. Downtown Chicago shimmered outside the glass walls, but inside, the light glinted off 6- and 7-figure price tags and the expensive jewelry adorning the city's elite. I stood beside Vivian, a glass of wine that cost more than my first espresso machine feeling heavy in my hand, observing her as she effortlessly navigated the currents of this rarefied social sea. Her uncle Theodore, a formidable figure and one of the gallery's most influential patrons, watched from a distance, a silent judge of the evening's proceedings. My tailored navy blazer, a uniform for my important wholesale client meetings, suddenly felt like a costume in this world of inherited privilege and effortless sophistication. I was a successful owner of a specialty coffee roasting business, built from the ground up on ethical sourcing and tireless effort. But here, surrounded by generational wealth and discussions of exclusive exhibition previews and cultural philanthropy, I felt like an interloper. Every glance seemed to measure my suit's fabric, my watch's brand, and my lack of a 7-figure acquisition anecdote. It was a suffocating feeling, the sense that I didn't quite belong in Vivian's orbit, despite the 6 months of my life I'd dedicated to her. The conversation, as it often did among this circle of art collectors and gallery board members, drifted to engagements. Someone casually mentioned a colossal rock recently spotted at a society wedding. The shift was immediate and brutal. Without an ounce of hesitation or a flicker of consideration for my presence, Vivian thrust her left hand forward. "This ring," she announced to the entire sophisticated group, a laugh bordering on cruelty escaping her lips, "looks exactly like something dispensed from a gumball machine in a grocery store lobby." The promise ring, a piece I had chosen with meticulous care and saved for over 3 months, was a beautiful vintage-inspired Art Deco design with a genuine, ethically sourced diamond. I'd selected it because it echoed the elegance of her grandmother's jewelry, a style I knew she admired. I wanted the ring to represent our serious intentions, a symbol of promise that valued thoughtfulness and history over sheer carat size. But to the assembled crowd, and most painfully, to Vivian, it was nothing more than a cheap, laughable trinket. Every pair of eyes swiveled to me, a collective gaze filled with pity, embarrassment, and barely concealed amusement. The weight of their judgment was immense, a heavy, suffocating blanket that pressed down on me. I was being publicly humiliated and diminished by the woman I had been planning to propose to before our 1-year anniversary. It was a calculated, devastating blow, aimed not just at the ring, but at my financial standing, my ambition, and my very worth in her world. A dramatic scene, an argument, a defense of the ring's actual value, was clearly what Vivian expected, a moment for her to further showcase her superiority. But in that moment of profound clarity, as the silence stretched thin, I knew. 6 months of my life had been wasted. I reached over, my hands surprisingly steady despite the seismic shift in my reality, and gently removed the ring from her finger. "Thank you, Vivian," I said, my voice calm, almost unnervingly so. "Thank you for providing such honest feedback about my gift-giving abilities and, more importantly, my understanding of your standards." The sophisticated crowd, expecting fireworks, was stunned into an uncomfortable silence. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked directly out, ignoring the hushed murmurs, and headed straight for the jewelry district, just 3 blocks away. I spent the next hour methodically liquidating every expensive piece of jewelry I had ever given her. The pearl earrings, the designer necklace, the tennis bracelet, and the infamous promise ring. I walked out with $3,200 in cash. It was a small but tangible victory, a reclaiming of resources, and, more importantly, my dignity. Returning to the gallery to retrieve my coat, I saw Linda, Vivian's stepmother, standing near the entrance. She had watched the entire aftermath unfold. Her expression was not one of disappointment, but of something close to approval and respect for how I'd handled the situation. She gave me a small, distinct nod. It was a silent, powerful affirmation that registered deep within me. Then came Marcus, Vivian's younger cousin, his face a roadmap of embarrassment. He quietly apologized for his family's behavior, revealing that Vivian had been systematically complaining about the ring's perceived cheapness to various relatives for weeks, consistently calling it an embarrassment when she thought I was out of earshot. It confirmed the malice behind her public act. This was no spontaneous slip, but a carefully rehearsed execution. Looking back, the seeds of this toxic moment were sown 6 months earlier at the Chicago Food and Wine Festival. That's where we met, at a pivotal moment in both our careers. I had a booth showcasing my specialty coffee roasting operation, a labor of love that stood proudly alongside the city's most respected culinary professionals. Vivian, in her element, was coordinating catering for high-end events, managing complex logistics, custom menus, and demanding wealthy clientele. Initially, she seemed genuinely captivated by my world. I remember the sparkle in her eyes when I explained my deep-seated passion for ethically sourced beans and the small batch roasting techniques I had perfected over years of trial and error. I spoke of my direct relationships with coffee farmers in Guatemala and Ethiopia, detailing the twice-yearly trips I took to ensure fair compensation and sustainable growing practices. Every bag of coffee, I emphasized, represented months of careful relationship building with agricultural cooperatives, a practice most large-scale roasters completely ignored in their pursuit of maximum profit margins. She asked intelligent questions about caffeine extraction, flavor notes, and the business model behind specialty coffee. Her curiosity about the technical aspects of roasting, which most people found either boring or incomprehensible, made me believe I had finally found someone who could appreciate both my entrepreneurial ambition and my commitment to ethical business practices. But as the initial whirlwind excitement of our romance settled into routine, the subtle, insidious comments began. My operation, built on such solid principles, became her quaint little hobby business compared to her family's restaurant empire, which boasted multiple locations and 2 generations of successful operations with annual revenues that dwarfed my own modest, but steadily growing, endeavor. The shift became acutely noticeable when she started pressuring me to network better at industry events, constantly criticizing my choice to reinvest profits into superior, state-of-the-art equipment rather than making flashy purchases, a high-end car, an expensive watch that she believed would impress potential clients or business partners. My focus on long-term sustainability and quality control was viewed as an embarrassing lack of focus on short-term flash. She slowly, systematically, and painfully began introducing me to her friends and family simply as someone she was spending time with, rather than proudly calling me her boyfriend or acknowledging our relationship as something serious and meaningful. At networking events, she would strategically position herself near more successful entrepreneurs, engaging them in deep conversations about expansion plans and investment opportunities. I was left standing nearby, feeling increasingly invisible and irrelevant to her obvious social climbing agenda, a goal I was only beginning to fully comprehend. The most painful moment of all occurred 3 weeks before the gallery incident, during a strained dinner with her parents. Her father, an imposing figure of inherited success, made a series of condescending jokes about coffee shops being suitable businesses for college kids who couldn't decide on real careers. Instead of defending my 5-year plan to open multiple locations or mentioning the wholesale contracts I was actively developing with local, high-profile restaurants, Vivian laughed along enthusiastically. She even added her own commentary about how cute it was that I took my little coffee project so seriously. I sat there in stunned, horrified silence. I watched the woman I was falling in love with completely dismiss everything I had worked toward for years. Her parents exchanged knowing glances, a subtle, chilling confirmation that this entire conversation had been a calculated test, a gauge of my reaction and a measure of my commitment to their daughter's obviously superior social status. The promise ring, in hindsight, had been a desperate, final attempt to demonstrate my serious intentions and prove that our relationship transcended the shallow materialism of her family's world. Her reaction at the gallery, however, confirmed my deepest fears about her true feelings toward my life choices and my professional ambitions. The time for denial was over. My journey with Vivian was complete. Walking out of that jewelry store with $3,200 cash felt like the first genuinely empowering and decisive action I had taken in months. It was a tangible affirmation of my self-respect, a stark contrast to the months of quiet, agonizing humiliation I had endured. With that money, I decided to do something completely uncharacteristic, something impulsive yet professionally driven. I booked a spontaneous, weekend trip to Napa Valley, using exactly half of the cash. This wasn't an escape. It was a targeted professional investment, a direct response to my renewed sense of purpose. I had been researching potential coffee and wine collaboration opportunities for some time, specifically targeting boutique wineries that shared my foundational commitment to artisanal quality and ethical sourcing practices. The timing, catalyzed by the breakup, was perfect. This impromptu trip gave me the chance to visit three different wineries that had recently expressed interest in developing custom coffee blends for their tasting rooms, exclusive events, and corporate gifts. I spent Saturday morning immersed in conversation at a venerable, family-owned vineyard, discussing the nuanced ways different roasting profiles, from light, acidic Ethiopian Yirgacheffe to dark, earthy Sumatran Mandheling, might complement their vintage selections and enhance the tasting experience. By the afternoon, I was touring a high-end operation that was eager to create coffee-infused dessert wines for their exclusive club members, seeing an innovative opportunity to blend two distinct crafts. Surrounded by people who genuinely appreciated craftsmanship, attention to detail, and quality above volume, I felt professionally energized and validated in a way I hadn't in weeks. My ambition was recognized not as a cute little project, but as a serious, viable business endeavor. The real, unexpected twist of the weekend came on Sunday evening. My phone rang, displaying an unknown number. It was Linda, Vivian's stepmother, who had somehow obtained my personal contact information. She called to personally apologize for the gallery incident, explaining that she had been watching the entire debacle unfold with growing concern about her stepdaughter's behavior. Linda confessed that she genuinely admired my entrepreneurial spirit and work ethic. She empathized deeply because, 2 decades earlier, she had built her own successful interior design firm from scratch, starting with a small loan and residential clients before gradually expanding into high-end hospitality and commercial projects. She understood exactly what it felt like to have people dismiss your ambitions based on your current status rather than your future potential and resilience. During our surprisingly candid and emotional conversation, Linda revealed that Vivian's biological mother had, before her passing when Vivian was 15, instilled certain deeply entrenched social climbing tendencies. Linda explained that the family had watched helplessly as Vivian replicated these destructive relationship patterns with a succession of previous boyfriends, men who, in her eyes, never quite measured up to her impossible, inherited standards of immediate success and conspicuous wealth. The most shocking revelation was the confession that Vivian had been actively and strategically networking with men from wealthy, established families at country club events for the past 2 months. This was not mere conjecture. Linda had discovered this through mutual friends who had expressed serious concern about Vivian's commitment and questioned whether she was truly serious about our relationship or simply keeping her options open while evaluating better prospects within the city's highest echelons. Linda warned me that Vivian was undoubtedly planning some kind of dramatic, manipulative reconciliation attempt designed to twist the narrative and make things right on her own terms. She strongly advised me to make myself unavailable when the inevitable attempt to charm her way back into my life occurred, encouraging me instead to pursue someone who would authentically value my character and ambition rather than constantly judging my current financial status or dismissing my hard-earned professional achievements as inadequate. Linda's conversation was a genuine act of kindness and a powerful confirmation that my decision to walk away was not just justified, but necessary for my future. 2 weeks after the professionally reinvigorating Napa Valley trip, my business led me to the Grand Geneva Resort. I was consulting with their management team about a complete overhaul of their coffee program, a high-profile, complex project. It was there I met Autumn Hayes, a sustainable agriculture coordinator whose presence was immediately striking. She was hired to guide the resort through a transition toward more environmentally and socially responsible sourcing for their vast catering and restaurant operations. Autumn immediately impressed me with her genuine enthusiasm for ethical business practices and her surprisingly detailed, nuanced knowledge about fair trade certification processes and supply chain transparency. Topics most people found either tedious or too complex to engage with. Our initial meeting, intended to be a simple discussion about coffee suppliers, quickly evolved into a fascinating 2-hour exchange covering everything from direct farmer relationships and environmental impact assessments to the complex logistics of maintaining quality control while supporting sustainable growing practices in developing regions. I found myself genuinely energized, excited to elaborate on my roasting process, my selective bean criteria, and my expansion plans. For the first time in months, I experienced a level of professional respect and intellectual curiosity that felt profoundly validating, especially coming from someone whose own career was dedicated to creating positive social and environmental change through conscious business decisions. Our professional consultation naturally extended into dinner at a nearby farm-to-table restaurant she recommended. Autumn revealed that she had, in fact, been following my coffee company's social media presence for several months. She specifically appreciated my commitment to transparency regarding sourcing practices and my willingness to share detailed information about the farming cooperatives I partnered with, qualities she saw as authentic dedication to ethical business rather than superficial marketing. The contrast with Vivian's dismissive, materialistic attitude toward my work was a devastatingly stark realization. I understood in that moment how starved I had been for a partner who actually understood and valued the core principles that drove my business decisions, instead of constantly questioning why I wasn't exclusively focused on maximizing profits and impressing investors with superficial growth metrics. This new connection, built on shared values and mutual professional respect, felt like the beginning of something genuine and meaningful, an emotional counterbalance to the toxicity I had just escaped. Meanwhile, Vivian, leveraging her extensive network of mutual professional connections and industry contacts, the same connections she had previously urged me to utilize for her benefit, had apparently discovered the increasing trajectory of my professional life. She knew I had been traveling for business, developing profitable new partnerships, and successfully closing deals with high-end hospitality clients who, unlike her, valued quality and ethical sourcing. Her realization of my continued success, separate from and indeed after her dismissal, clearly acted as a catalyst for a dramatic response. She showed up unannounced at my roaster location the following Tuesday afternoon, orchestrating what was clearly intended to be a grand, remorseful spectacle. In her hand was an ostentatiously expensive Tag Heuer watch, which she presented as an apology gift for her unforgivable behavior at the gallery opening. The gesture was hollow, a materialistic attempt to buy back what she believed she had carelessly misplaced, entirely missing the point that the issue was never the value of the ring, but the value she placed on me. I politely, but firmly, declined the extravagant watch. Standing amidst the warm, comforting scent of roasting beans, the true heart of my ambition, I calmly explained that the relationship was over and that I had, in fact, started seeing someone new who shared my professional values, personal goals, and ethical commitments. The transformation on Vivian's face was instantaneous and revealing. Her feigned remorse dissolved into raw, uncontrolled shock, which rapidly morphed into blazing indignation and then barely controlled rage. She demanded to know who this new person could possibly be, who could possibly appreciate me more than she did, and who could understand my potential better than someone from her sophisticated social circle. Her inherent belief in her own superiority was the most striking element of the confrontation. She truly believed no one outside her bubble of inherited wealth could be a worthwhile partner. The confrontation escalated as she began to criticize Autumn, basing her cruel assessments solely on the few meager details she had managed to gather from mutual acquaintances and the quick, superficial judgment she passed on any profession outside the rigid structures of corporate finance or inherited business. She sneered, suggesting that anyone working in sustainable agriculture was likely just another idealistic dreamer who would never grasp the harsh realities of serious business success or help me achieve the kind of significant financial stability and societal standing that someone with my inherent ambition truly needed. Her comments were a rehash of the same toxic, judgmental rhetoric that had poisoned our entire 6 months together. I ended the conversation with clear, unwavering finality, calmly stating that Autumn valued my work, the dedication, the ethics, and the long-term vision, rather than constantly judging it against her impossible, fleeting standards. I emphasized that Autumn had never once suggested that I should change my career path, my values, or my focus simply to impress other people. She understood, I finished, that building something meaningful takes time, patience, and dedication. Qualities far superior to shortcuts found through exploiting other people's established networks or relying on inherited advantages. With that, I ushered her out, leaving her sputtering indignation to fade into the noise of the bustling street. Just 3 days later, an unexpected LinkedIn message appeared. It was from Vivian's younger brother, Marcus, requesting a private meeting. He suggested we grab coffee at the Millennium Park Cafe, a location heavy with professional significance, as I had once catered a successful corporate event there for a financial consulting firm that had subsequently become one of my most reliable wholesale clients. Marcus had always struck me as the most grounded, least pretentious member of Vivian's immediate family. He worked quietly as a social worker, having deliberately chosen a path that distanced him from the corrosive materialism of the family restaurant empire. While I desperately wanted to sever all ties with anything related to Vivian, his motivations intrigued me enough to agree to the meeting. As we sat together over a perfectly extracted espresso and artisanal pastries, Marcus's composure suggested the gravity of what he was about to share. He began by revealing that the family dynamics were far more complicated and psychologically damaging than I had ever fully realized. He explained that Vivian had essentially been locked in a destructive competition with the idealized memory of their deceased mother since childhood. Her entire existence, he suggested, was an unending, desperate attempt to live up to the mother's impossible, archaic standards of marrying well, a feat the mother had apparently achieved by securing their father's affections and, more importantly, access to his family's already established restaurant empire. He elaborated that their father's subsequent business success came largely through the mother's initial strategic social connections and old money family relationships. Vivian, Marcus explained with palpable sadness, had internalized the truly toxic belief that a partner's current financial status and social standing mattered infinitely more than their fundamental character, their intrinsic work ethic, or their long-term potential for organic growth and success. The ring incident, he suggested, was merely the tip of a deeply dysfunctional iceberg. The most stunning and validating revelation came next. Marcus slid his phone across the table, showing me detailed screenshots. The evidence was irrefutable. Vivian had been secretly applying to highly competitive MBA programs at Northwestern, Columbia, and the London Business School for months. She had been planning to abruptly leave Chicago for what she called better opportunities, without ever once discussing these profound, life-altering decisions with me or acknowledging how they would completely upend our supposed shared future. According to Marcus, she had been telling select family members for weeks that she was merely waiting for me to prove myself worthy of her time and attention, cynically treating our entire relationship like some kind of protracted, humiliating audition process where I needed to demonstrate a quantifiable level of financial success before she would even consider granting a serious commitment. The final piece of evidence, however, was what truly stunned me and solidified the betrayal. Marcus showed me further screenshots, proving that Vivian had been simultaneously maintaining active dating profiles on exclusive, invitation-only apps like Raya and The League, platforms specifically marketed to high-income professionals. While dating me and claiming to want a serious relationship, she had been actively messaging and engaging with corporate lawyers, investment bankers, and tech executives. The conversations displayed her discussing her palpable frustration with dating someone beneath her social status and openly complaining about having to wait for me to achieve the kind of success that would make her comfortable introducing me to her extended professional and social network. Marcus concluded his confession by warning me that Vivian had been obsessively tracking my social media activity since our breakup, discovering my burgeoning relationship with Autumn through mutual connections and LinkedIn updates. This discovery, he feared, had triggered increasingly erratic and alarming behavior, including her calling my business suppliers in a desperate, toxic attempt to verify my company's financial stability and overall legitimacy. The evidence, presented with such painful honesty by her own brother, was the final, irreversible nail in the coffin of any lingering doubt.